Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Black History Month marks a significant opportunity to celebrate the efforts of Britons from diverse backgrounds who helped build our great nation and shine a spotlight on their stories and demonstrate our country's tolerance and diversity, one where we are raised to celebrate pluralism, opportunity and aspiration. We should all be exceptionally proud of our history. I know I am. Since the Romans, people of colour have represented many of the gold and silver threads that run through our nation's rich and glorious national tapestry. Over the last 200 years or so, Britain's history has been one marked by the emancipation of people from poverty and tyranny. In 1808, the Royal Navy established the West Africa Squadron with the objective of tackling the Atlantic slave trade through patrolling waters off West Africa. Between 1808 and 1860, the West Africa Squadron freed in excess of 150,000 Africans. More recently, in the Second World War, Britain stood with her imperial family and her allies against the tyranny of Nazism and totalitarianism and led the fight to emancipate Europe from Hitler's grasp and Asia from the Japanese Empire. Under this Conservative government, and frankly, all I can remember, those from ethnic minorities are doing better. We are doing better at school and entering universities into ever higher numbers. More people from BAME backgrounds are entering into apprenticeships, equipping them with vital skills to secure employment. At the same time, the number of stop and search amongst black people has dropped down from 117 incidents per 1,000 black people from 2009-10 to 38 in 2018-19. It is the Conservatives who focus on the individual, regardless of their ethnicity, religious beliefs or sexual orientation. Let us not forget that the first black mixed-race member of Parliament was John Stuart, a Conservative, who was elected after the Great Reform Act of 1832.
I missed him.
And then Manshuri Banerjee from the Indian subcontinent was the first British Indian Conservative MP elected in 1895, a third of a century before Labour's first Indian origin Member of Parliament. Now, despite... Sorry, Labour's. Did I say Conservative?
No.
Please.
Although, of course, the Labour Party hasn't yet managed to have a female Prime Minister, and they were the third or fourth party to have a non-white Member of Parliament, they have got one record, which is that Bill Morris was the first major black trade union leader who got it by doing his job well, which is a kind of merit issue which all the people are trying to put forward on both sides of the House.
Well, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I always feel an immense privilege being with the Father of the House interceding. Anything to raise his interest and anything I have to say is a great honour. Now, despite such delightful interjections and all of the Conservatives' long history of advancing pluralism and diversity, there is still a long road to travel and a great journey ahead of us for us to actually achieve an ever more equal society. But I believe that can only be achieved, and that journey can only be travelled through the power of the individual and individual liberties, free markets, and celebrating and learning about our history. Those are the ways to achieve the destination, to arrive at that destination. For reasons way beyond my limited understanding, the party opposite believe that they have some form of ownership over immigrant populations, and the descendants, such as myself, of those immigrant populations, and can permanently rely on our vote. Yet, it is the Conservatives who today champion and have always championed aspiration and opportunity, regardless of one's background or any other characteristics. It is for this exact reason my late father, who travelled from the northwest frontier of what was then British India, now Pakistan, and served in the NHS, was a lifelong Conservative supporter. During the recent Black Lives Matter protests, I was disheartened to read banners stating, "Capitalism demands inequality." And they were clear there for the world to see. I've rarely seen such a poor understanding of capitalism or inequality. Let us not forget, and I think it would behoove members opposite to listen to this point, let us not forget that the key principle of capitalism is the voluntary exchange of goods and services between parties. There is no obligation, no coercion, only consent. Attacking the economic system that has unequivocally improved the lives of billions across the world will only lead to us all being far worse off. I think there's been a great misapprehension amongst many people confusing capitalism with mercantilism. And for that, I would suggest a little bit of economic history would be helpful. Also, for those who wish to have state controls and impositions with free trade globally, let us also not forget that it is free trade more than any government policy ever of any country in the world that has lifted millions, hundreds of millions, out of poverty throughout the third world, throughout Africa, throughout the subcontinent of India and elsewhere. Through the power of fair trade, in 1950, 1.8 billion people out of an entire global population of only 2.52 billion lived in extreme poverty, whilst by 2015, 0.7 billion of a population of 7.35 billions lived in extreme poverty. I think that's a very, very strong argument for free market economics and for the power of free trade and conservative values. If we are to achieve a society where everyone, regardless of any physical trait, are to thrive and succeed, the only route is through conservative values of enhancing individual liberty and championing free market economics.
Yeah.